Let's get some analysis now on the state of the global economy. With me is Saruhan Hatipoglu, CEO of BERI Consulting. Welcome to the show.
Good to see you, Anand.
Let's go first to China. Good news out of China. Inflation appears to be in control. It's within targets. The producer price index has also dropped again. What is the impact of that going to be?
Well, it's very good news, and I think it's confirmed now that there's soft landing in China. It's not going to be a hard landing. We got great industrial output numbers. Retail sales are doing really well. And it's all owing to the mini stimulus that the government has acted upon not too long ago, with cutting taxes for small businesses. That really helped, simplifying procedures for exporters. That really helped. There's one concern that we have at BERI regarding China, and that's credit growth. That has started slowing since the beginning of the second half of this year. And I think it's going to increase, accelerate, slowing down, which is going to have an impact on consumption growth. So I think China is going to miss its 7.5% target, but I think it's going to be still higher than 7% growth, which is very encouraging because we're talking about even 6.5 to 6.7% growth about 2 months ago. So I'm very hopeful about China's soft landing at this point.
But even China's being conservative about that for next year, talking about 7% right now.
Correct. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. There's going to be problems. I mean, not all emerging markets are created equal, and China has done good macroeconomic reforms. But it's going to be affected, obviously, by a lot of changes that may be taking place. There's a lot of unknowns in the U.S., what's going to happen with the debt issue there. European situation is going to get complicated after the German election is over, because Germany is going to start talking about the peripheral countries who are in debt. So there are a lot of unknowns, yes.
Okay, let's go to Japan. The economy there, it's expanded at a rate that was faster than expected, and this has prompted the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe now to talk about introducing that sales tax or increasing the sales tax. Is that going to happen now?
I think it will. The news that we're getting out of Japan, though, is that some close advisor to the Prime Minister are discouraging him from acting upon this right now because they're worried that it's going to interfere with economic growth. We disagree at BERI with that because the idea that they have is that when they did that in 1997, they increased the consumption tax, the recession followed quite quickly. But if you look at when that happened with the Asian financial crisis, as well as bad debts in Japan's banking industry, that contributed to that recession. Right now, Japanese economy is moving forward. I think the popularity of the Prime Minister is high up there. This is a good time to get this started. Slowly introduced from 5%, first 8%, and by October, I think going to 15%. I think they have the political backing that they need at this point.
What is driving Japanese growth at the moment?
Well, the expansionary, I shouldn't say expansionary, they call this flexible fiscal policy. So there's fiscal expansion that they're doing, and they're gearing it towards short-term infrastructure development, which is creating employment and contributing to growth. And then there's, of course, the Bank of Japan's monetary policy. The goal is to increase monetary base, to double monetary base in 2 years, and they're actually following up with that. The latest data we saw in August, monetary base increased over 40%. This is the highest Japan has seen in over 35 years. So that's working.
Can we expect a stimulus package?
We can expect a stimulus package, but at the same time, we have to remember, because all the politicians in Japan know their huge gross debt to GDP ratio, which is about 238 to 240%. So they have to be very careful with their stimulus measures. I think first things first, things are working, slowly introduce consumption tax, and then talk about further expansionary policy if need be.
Okay, let's move to one of the emerging economies, India. The currency, the rupee, is up 6%, about 6%. What's behind that surge?
I think my only answer to that is the new central bank governor. His policies, he's a very well-respected economist, and his policies are already gearing toward getting more investment into the country. He's going to be allowing Indian banks to borrow foreign currency, as well as something that's very important. He's going to allow banks to engage in forward foreign exchange contracts. So they're going to be taken care of with the hedging risks. These are all good measures, but only short-term measures. India has a lot more problems, in my opinion. One of the biggest problems that they're facing is lack of reform. They haven't done anything when times were good, when money was flowing in, and I think they're going to start paying for it next year, probably middle next year, when consumption starts falling.
Right. If we talk broadly, I mean, what are the major risks the global economy faces right now?
Well, if we look at the developed countries, there's an issue of next Fed chairman. That's causing uncertainty. Of course, the debt issue is coming up. We're going to see Republicans, Democrats talking about that again. We're going to get near a cliff and avert it last second. All these things are about to happen again. We're going to relive that. And Europe, again, German election is going to end, like I said, and they're going to have to deal with this peripheral debt issue. They're saying there's light at the end of the tunnel as far as Europe is concerned. I'm not sure if that light is coming from a large train that's moving toward the recovery in the opposite direction. We'll see.
Well, I mean, there's also a lot of talk about the budget debate here in the United States. Everything now eclipsed by Syria, but that debate is coming along. And it's important to get this resolved very quickly, isn't it?
It is. In some ways, I think it was more important last year, Anand, to be honest, because investors are not expecting this. Investors know that Republicans and Democrats are not going to see eye to eye on this issue, but they're going to agree at some point. But there is going to be psychological impact because obviously the later the agreement comes, the worse it is for the stock market. And the U.S. economic growth right now is weak. It's fledgling growth. And that's going to have a negative impact on that, at least in the short term. So fourth quarter growth in the U.S. is probably going to be a little more disappointing than we anticipated in the beginning of the year.
You know, one other quick issue, and I saw this, that was the WTO has cut back on its forecast for global economic growth from to 2.5% from 3.3%. It attributes that cutback mainly to the fact that the slowdown in Europe has taken longer than they expected. But it hasn't factored in the slowdown in China, in India, and Brazil. What happens when that factors in?
Well, WTO, IMF, their statistics, they always start with very positive forecasts, and then they look at the data, especially developed country data, and they revise that. We're at a point where economic data are encouraging. Coming from emerging markets, again, some emerging markets they have undertaken reform measures. So their data, their positive data is very good news. But we're dependent on politicians. And in the US, in Europe, even in India, when they started talking about capital controls, foreign investors started running away. So what the politicians will do and how they will act, enter Turkey into that scenario, by the way, as an emerging market, will have an impact on global growth. If they actually act positive, we will see better global prospects come 2014.
Saruhan Hatipoglu, thanks for joining us, sir.
Thank you.